What's going on, people? This is Jay here. So to start this video off, let me start by saying that I myself am an avid gamer. I can I can remember gaming. Starting from the earliest at 5 years old, from games like Super Mario to the Nintendo 64 version to Sega Genesis. Like all my life, I've been a gamer. For me, video games represent, to me, if not the greatest, one of the greatest forms of storytelling and just entertainment medium that we have today and that there's ever been. Video games have, just through the evolution of them, have advanced far enough to where now they tell their own unique stories. You grow attached to the characters that are either that you take control of or that you meet along your journey within the video game. They take you through vast worlds and just different experiences that only video games can really give you. It's hard for me to just kind of put into words just because video games are so unique in the way they allow you to take control of the character or view things from a different perspective. And they've gone beyond what I think like the average person still views video games as, like a shoot 'em up or one of those like small pixel games where it's like you're jumping up above characters. They've evolved into something so much deeper, so much more complex, and something so much just greater than when they first started out as, which is like, little kids playing them, and then those kids grew up, the medium continued to evolve, and now you have fan bases that are dedicated to different types of series of video games. Not only that, video games have become kind of have now developed a community component to them. You now see entire fan bases just based on video games come together at conferences, at conventions, at video game tournaments, all to share their love of video games. It might just be a love of a particular series. It might be a love of a certain type of character. Whatever it is, you've now seen many communities develop as a result of this. Sorry, and have developed because of video games. It's now become a regular part of people's lives. It's become a regular part of people's understanding of the world. Now, for myself, I particularly enjoy all types of video games. I'm not very big on the sports genre. First-person shooters, they're great for me, except I'm more into the ones that actually have a story to tell. Like, I'm not really big into Call of Duty or just like any other ones that are like, people typically just go straight to the multiplayer for those. But to me, any game that's telling a story, whether it be a military one, whether it be based in fantasy, historical, I really am engrossed in the story and the character development as you go through the video games, the different characters that you meet, the different worlds that you get to explore. And I really just get engrossed into the worlds that are created by these developers, and just kind of like just the lore behind the concepts. So, because of that, typically the games I like to focus on are role-playing games, games that involve strategy, simply because, like, I've always been a fan of games like Connect 4, chess, and just anything that just kind of involves using your mind. So I like games like Ruse, which is kind of like a military tactics video game that comes with its own story campaign that you can play through. And just like I said, anything that kind of allows me to explore different worlds, getting really engrossed in the characters and the stories, those are the games I just like really just get gassed up about and just really enjoy playing. And while we're on the subject, let's talk about how video games affect me. Personally, I mean, I can't say that they really do, in the sense that the world kind of tends to, not the world, I should say, typically some media outlets still tend to portray video games as violence inducing, dangerous for kids because they're still developing, or for those who may be suffering from some sort of mental illness that they can somehow prompt them to do something. I can tell you, as somebody who was playing games even before they were 5 years old, I'll say even from like 4 all the way up until adulthood, I played violent video games, whether they were rated M, T, E, whatever letter you want to give them. From an early age, I mean, I've grown up a relatively normal person, I would think. And I don't believe that they should have the blame placed on them just because they're just the next form of big media that older generations can't really understand simply because they didn't grow up with it. But with that being said, I do understand like why video games are being targeted in particular. Simply because if you look at any other form of media that's ever come along, whether it be television, whether it be music, movies, books, magazines, each of these mediums, when they were new, I know in the case of books have been around, but typically literature that's foreign to maybe like an older generation, anything that's new typically follows a cycle where first it's controversial, demonized, then just kind of looked down upon, frowned upon, or just looked at as very strange. Eventually, as generations get used to it, and as you see other generations start to grow up with it, there starts to be a better understanding of the content, and there starts to be a more acceptance of the medium. You've seen this in particular with comic books. It was one time predicted that comic books would be the rise of crimes. It was predicted that kids are going to start stealing. They're going to start being more violent because of all the violence that was being portrayed within the magazines, whether it be comic books, superheroes, whatever it is. And video games are just kind of the next part of that blame cycle. For example, the old school Batman and Robin comic book magazines were once brought in a court case as immoral simply because it was believed that Batman and Robin were secretly gay lovers. No context behind this, but this was the idea that many people came up with simply just to paint a certain type of picture of the new form of medium that they didn't quite understand. And really just video games are just the next part of this cycle. You see many studies that have come out that have proven that, once again, that violent video games do not cause people to act out in a certain type of way. They don't cause school shootings. They don't cause people to become aggressive or to fight one another. In any case or any type of case study that's ever, quote unquote, proved that there was a correlation, if you actually look very closely at how they actually conducted these studies, you will see many traces in which case the way they measured it was just made absolutely no sense at all. Whether somebody was willing to, they might like ask them a particular type of loaded question, like, do you feel more hyper after playing this video games? Do you feel charged up? Are you more excited? Or just different things like that just, it paints a very slippery slope as to a correlation between violence and video games. But it's as I said before, like video games are just the next medium that has gotten as big as it has with, you have now people who play video games very much competitively. It's now universally used by both adults and kids alike. And it's my prediction that within the next, I would say like 5 to 10 years, we're going to be blaming some other type of medium for certain behaviors or fearing that it's going to cause some type of societal harm Video games just at this very moment, because they're so prevalent in our society, they're just the next one on the blame cycle.